Religion, a beacon of compromise, a path where the lessons of life can be learned, a place where people can be brought together under a series of beliefs. Religion, a source of human conflict, a place where disagreements are bred that will last for centuries, a place where people are often divided. Religion has been the cause of many conflicts over human history. One of the longest such conflicts exists between the Catholics and the Protestants of Ireland. The result? A series of battles spanning over some 700 years, rather than a series of compromises. Nothing was solved, nothing made a difference, until the Easter Rising. It began on April 24th, 1916.
Sir Roger Casement, a knight of the British realm, along with the help of others, planned attacks on Dublin's government buildings and other strategic points around the city, notably the General Post Office, for Easter Sunday, April 23, 1916. The idea was to start a massive uprising throughout Ireland, a conflict to end all conflicts. The Germans had supplied Casement with a ship and weaponry needed for the attack. English intelligence was well aware of Casement's ship, and it was intercepted. Casement fled on a rubber raft, and although he was eventually caught, the rebellion was set to take place. Other parts of the plan began to fail as well. First, a leader of the revolt withdrew himself and his army, leaving only 1,000 volunteers to fight Easter Sunday from the original 5,000. Second, the attacks were supposed to take place on Easter Sunday. News was not sent out to the newspaper on time, and the rising was delayed one day.
On Easter Monday, April 24th, 1916, 4 minutes past noon, Patrick Pearse read the proclamation for Irish independence out loud from the steps of the General Post Office to a quiet crowd of Irish citizens.
The Provisional Government of the Irish Republic to the people of Ireland, Irishmen and Irish women, in the name of God and of the dead generations from which she receives her old tradition of nationhood, Ireland, through us, summons her children to her flag and strikes for her freedom. Joseph Plunkett, Sean McDermott, Tom McDonough, Eamon Kent, Thomas Clark, and James Connolly, along with Patrick Pearse, put their names to this document, knowing the consequences if the rising failed. Certain death.
The proclamation was meant to gain support of the people, but more importantly, the proclamation was read to declare to the world the Irish plan for independence from England. In the words of one of the signers, Eamon Kent, "Much sweet is death for one's country." He was not alone in this sentiment. The Irish volunteers, along with the citizen army, were the majority of the soldiers. There are about 1,500 people in all fighting for the independence of the Irish people. At first, the British troops were taken by surprise, but as the conflict continued throughout the week, more and more troops were being sent to Dublin. The rebels began to grow weak, and their already low numbers were becoming less. Finally, after 6 days of battle and heavy casualties, Patrick Pearse surrendered. The English took the prisoners to Rotunda Gardens. They were kept in horrible conditions, spending their time outdoors. Rain poured. Blackened clouds filled the sky, and the air grew cold. From here, they were put into Kilmainham prison.
Pearse was put on trial and sentenced to death along with the other 6 signers. Over the course of 3 days, most of the men were executed by firing squad. Sir Roger Casement, unlike the rest, was hanged for treason, being originally from England. He was found guilty of smuggling arms from Germany, an enemy of England during World War I, an act of treason. Because of all the executions, Irish nationalism grew, as did the number of outraged people among the Irish Catholics. 2 other prisoners of the Rising, Michael Collins and Eamon de Valera, were spared execution. They emerged as the new leaders in this movement and worked together to fight English rule in Ireland. De Valera was the political frontman and Michael Collins was the military leader. Collins and de Valera, along with the Irish Republican Army, began by plotting the assassinations of British agents throughout Ireland. They were successful and kept the conflict going, even though they had been defeated during the Easter Rising. No compromise was in sight.
This was the beginning of the Anglo-Irish War, yet another conflict, and it lasted until 1921 when the English called a truce, a compromise, to stop the guerrilla fighting. This was a huge victory for Ireland.
What was attained in the treaty, the Anglo-Irish Treaty of December 6, 1921, would probably have been secured peacefully through the political process without resort to violence. And of course, the treaty didn't satisfy many of the rebels completely. I frankly think it made some difference. What it did was to produce, at least for 26 of the 32 Irish counties, a virtually independent government, which the British, up to that point, were not willing to concede.
Collins was sent to England against his will by De Valera in order to negotiate a treaty. Reaching a compromise would be difficult because Collins considered himself a soldier, not a politician. De Valera didn't want to go because he knew he would not be able to get what the Irish people had hoped for, a free, independent, unified country. Desperate for compromise, Collins agreed to the treaty, which divided the country into two parts. The Irish Catholic in the south would be free to rule themselves, and the English Protestant in the northern 6 counties would be ruled by Great Britain. Collins compromised and took what the English offered because it was another step towards peace and freedom. De Valera was not in favor of this treaty. He did not want a compromise. He wanted it to be all or nothing.
Unfortunately, this compromise fueled yet another conflict. Michael Collins for and De Valera against the Irish Free State Treaty. This disagreement among two friends and heroes of the Irish cause led to the Irish Civil War. It also led to the assassination of Collins. Michael Collins managed to gain independence for all the counties except the predominantly Protestant northern 6. He believed he could build upon this compromise to gain more from the British through negotiations. The treaty, in his words, gives us freedom to achieve freedom. It gave the Irish people a choice between compromise or continue the conflict. Today, through the eyes of some, the battle is still being fought and the conflict continues. Northern Ireland remains part of Britain and its citizens remain divided along the nationalistic and religious ideals. Sinn Féin and the IRA continue their struggle to unite Ireland under one flag with little room